My name is Will, and I will be your host as we discuss today's topic, ABM Unplugged, Ask the Experts Anything, brought to you by VIB. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's panel. For today's session, we have two dynamic speakers, Jeremy Sporn, president of Royce Brook Media, and Kristy Morris, senior tech marketing leader. And to keep today's conversation flowing, we have VIB's vice president of marketing, Mariah West, as our moderator. Now let's kick it over to Mariah to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. Appreciate the intro, and thanks, Kristy and Jeremy, for joining us today. As Will said, I'm Mariah. Hi. I'm excited to be hosting the discussion today on ABM, especially because ABM continues to be such an incredibly hot topic and one that I personally have engaged in most of my positions. And I'd say especially over the last 5 years or so, because it has so much promise and concept, but there's so many different options. And in some cases, there's confusion around what successful ABM actually looks like. But before I jump in, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about VIB and how we may be able to help you in your ABM strategy. So if you're not familiar with VIB, we are a demand generation partner for high-tech companies, primarily in the B2B space. And said in the most simple way, we help our partners in that all-important task of generating new clients through different lead generation tactics. And this is such a relevant topic for us, in part because some of the value that we deliver is to help companies get connected with our community of tech professionals in their target accounts. Because it's one thing to know what accounts you want to target, but it's a whole other animal to know the individuals and also then have the rights to legally reach out to them. And that's one of the many things we help our clients do. So I would say to you in the audience, if you're a B2B company that sells technology, that sells to technology professionals, and you need some quick help to generate results, we would love to have a conversation with you on how we can help.
Thanks for the intro. Myself, Jeremy Sporn, president of Royce Brook Media, been in marketing for 12 plus years and have run account-based marketing campaigns at 2 different organizations. And at its simplest, and I think we could just simplify it as much as possible, account-based marketing is focusing on the correct accounts or companies that you want to bring on as customers first, and then looking at the human beings, the people within those companies that are the correct inroads that will be the best opportunity for you to sell your offering. So that's the simplest way I could put it, is categorizing the most ideal prospects and ideal customers that you have, starting with the account first and the important things about the account, and then looking to the human beings second. That may sound overly simplistic, but you'd be shocked how often it does not go that simplistic. So anyway, that's exactly what it is. What it is not is, a world of alphabet soup of, needing necessarily like personas and avatars and some of that stuff. Those can all be a part of what your account-based marketing program. But at its simplest, it's, hey, who are the people that I bring, who are the companies that I bring the most value to? And let's start with those. And then who are the human beings at those companies that matter, for what I'm offering.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeremy. It's a great scene setter. Kristy, same question to you, and I guess also introductions to you, if you don't mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself and your experience with ABM and what it is and isn't from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Kristy Morris. I've been in high technology sales and marketing positions for over 30 years. I have experience in both early stage startup companies and Fortune 500 companies, and I've done ABM in both. So there's a lot of differences when you're doing them in well-funded companies versus early stage startups. So with that said, so what is it and what is it not? So I was thinking about this a lot this morning about how I was going to answer this question. And I'm going to come at it from a very realistic perspective, because I've done this before a few times now. So what it is not is it is not a standalone strategy as part of your overall marketing and sales strategy. It needs to be part of something that's integrated amongst your bigger marketing plan. It is really an enhancement to whatever your existing marketing plan and strategy is. It is not something that you do short term. It is a long-term play, because if you're going to start targeting accounts, it's going to take longer, and you're targeting a lot more people now as the sales motion has become more complex, and you've got more people now in the buying decision-making, influencing sphere. So it's not short-term, it's long-term. And I would say, as you're embarking on this, it is going to require an enormous amount of patience. So, and why I say that is people think it's one thing and then you're going to start and you're going to be like, oh, we learned that. Just be patient with yourself as you're going along. Don't boil the ocean, just keep it simple, and you'll have small wins along the way. Be kind of my advice right now, or how I look at it.
That's great. Thanks, Kristy. So I heard not persona-based, right? Account-based. I mean, it is in the name. Long-term strategy integrated with your marketing, broader marketing plan. But I think one of the biggest questions that we got was just a really standard, like, how do you actually get started? There were a ton of questions on what are the tactics to getting started? What's the strategy? What things do you do first and why? What are common struggles when you start? So considering many of our viewers are at the beginning of their journey, Kristy, I'll stay with you for a minute. How would you consult someone on how to get started? And can you also share some of the do's and don'ts you've experienced in the early stages since you've done it in multiple organizations of different sizes?
Yeah. So because it's such a hot topic and it's a trend now that's going on, it's becoming more and more popular to do account-based marketing. The first thing that everyone needs to ask themselves is, does this approach make sense with my overall sales and marketing strategy? Let's just start with, does it even make sense for us where we're at in this point in time in our company, in the stage of our customer base, et cetera? The other thing that's really important before you get started is don't build it and they will come. And what I mean by that is, don't build something and think sales is going to go, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It is something that has to be done in concert with your sales leadership teams. And that could be your sales VP, regional directors, sales managers. The entire organization, along with sales, has to be in the process of doing this. You're going to have to, and Jeremy and I talked quite a bit about this, you do have to do some education, socializing internally between marketing, sales, and sometimes even product marketing, because all those different business units are typically involved together. Because everyone has a different definition for ABM right now, everyone has to come to terms with how are we defining it as an organization, what it is and what it is not. Like I said, this is not just a marketing program. It's part of an overall integrated strategy. Don't go into it thinking, like I said, they'll build it and they will come. They will not. I've seen this done before when I integrated or I went into a company. It was already in motion and they were like, well, sales wouldn't buy off on it. So we went ahead and started it to prove to them that it was going to be great. It failed. So don't do that. Just fight through it, socializing, educating, even if it takes a little more time. And then some of the other things you need to ask yourself is, do you have the resources to support the program right now? Do you have a dedicated team internally? Are you going to use an agency externally? And what I mean by that too is, do you have the program dollars to do it? So ABM is going to require some investment in lots of different areas, people, program dollars, potentially marketing tech stack. So you got to really take a step back and think, do I have the foundation to do this right now? Does it make sense for me? And those are just some of the kind of the things I would think about before you even get started is, do we have the foundation, the buy-in, and how we're going to do this as an organization?
Those are great. I think, something that speaks to me especially is that the definition is different and it should be different depending on what kind of organization you run and the type of business you're trying to do. Same question to you, Jeremy. You work with a lot of clients. If somebody came to you and wanted to get started, how would you consult them on getting started and some of the do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so I'll build on what Kristy said because everything she said is spot on. So usually the first thing that I like to ask someone, I alluded to this earlier, is tell me about who you are the most valuable to, not who you want, but who values you the most. And that the idea here is that those people, those companies that value you the most are the ones that you're going to end up focusing on, because they're the ones that they're going to be the happiest that you're providing the service. You're going to be able to charge the most. And I would say that's the first question that I always tell everyone to start with. even if you don't have any clients and you're a brand new business, you should have an idea of who you're going to bring the most value to. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you provide fractional CFO services. If you previously worked at a medical device company, you are more valuable to other medical device companies as a fractional CFO than you would be to potentially other businesses, because your experience is going to be more valuable to additional medical device companies because they have similarities. So having an idea of who you bring the most value to is usually the first thing that I like for people to start with, and that also leads to what the value of a customer is. Which, to Kristy's point, when you think about the resources that it needs to support an ABM program, you need to have a good understanding of what a client is worth. You're going to go out and get these accounts, and you need to know how much money, time, effort you're willing to spend to go after these folks to bring one in. It's one of the most important metrics that you can have is, some people use the term lifetime value or customer acquisition cost. There's all these things that that go into some of this stuff, but having a good understanding of how valuable these accounts are to you is a really good number to have. And it's one of the things that would determine whether someone should or should not go down this path. The other, you mentioned, Mariah, do's or don'ts. One of the things that I would say is, this is a little bit more nuts and bolts when you get into, but definitely incorporate touch points you're used to. So for instance, if you're already doing cold calling, if you're already doing ads or other things like that, incorporate things that are familiar to you into your account-based management program so that it's not all brand new. You're probably going to add some new things in there that you've never done before, but it's helpful to have some familiar things so you can, ground yourself a little bit. And then the other thing that I would say is, don't let complexity crush your execution. ABM programs can be as simple or as complex as you make them. You can, although there's a lot that goes into making one ABM program successful, the best ones have a clear focus, clear steps, clear tracking, and then it's it's execution from there. But complexity can kill that sometimes, so you don't need to overdo it. I think that covers some of the do's and don'ts and where I would start.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, Kristy, you're saying, do you have the resources to do it effectively? And on the other hand, Jeremy, you're also saying, don't reinvent the wheel, reuse existing resources as touch points. And in both cases, if you marry the two, I mean, you can do it in a way that's effective, utilizing your existing resources and touch points.
100%.
In the case of ABM, for the majority of marketers, I mean, I have yet to meet a marketer who is in a company that only does ABM. There's always something else, right? There's more than just that. There's an entire marketing strategy. There's an entire plan, a broader plan. And a lot of the submissions we had were on the topic of how do you actually do it? So we're talking about resources. How do you actually balance ABM with other tactics? And there were some nested questions in there on, can you do ABM without blowing the budget? I think a woman named Sarah submitted that. Can you do it without blowing the budget? I love that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and any tips you have for balancing and aligning an ABM focus with other marketing initiatives or incorporating it into the larger plan. And let's start with you, Jeremy.
Sure thing. So I know Kristy will touch on some of this stuff, but the idea of ABM is that you have really high value contacts that you want to go after. So it's not like you're going to stop, publishing content, whether you have an SEO strategy or you have, whatever strategy you have, whether you're only working from referrals, you have a strategy, you have content, you have something that you're doing already. You're not abandoning that. But the idea is that you have these super high value targets that you want to go after with ABM. You have medium value targets and you have lower value targets. You're going to tier them. And like I said, I know Kristy is itching to talk about this today. but the idea here is that the way you don't blow your budget is by ensuring that you go after the highest value targets with the most effort and resources. So it's like anything else out there. If something's going to give you a higher rate of return, you're going to put more investment in it. So don't blow the budget by using the same effort and spend on every single person who could buy your services. That's not going to help you out at all. make sure that you tier your accounts to focus on the ones that are going to bring you the most value. So you're spending the most money and the most time and the most resources on the ones that you expect to give you the highest return. So I'd say that's a really good way to make sure that you're not going to blow your budget. And if you are incorporating ABM into the stuff that you're already doing, a good number of these accounts are going to have heard of you before, have understood, sort of your brand, or the messaging that you're trying to put out there. So it's in addition to some of the stuff you're already doing. So
Kristy, thoughts?
Yeah, so Jeremy and I are a lot on the same page here. Tiered approach is always best. So you're not going to, none of your programs should be running in silos unless you're maybe doing vertical marketing or something like that. But if you've got a broad-based marketing strategy, like Jeremy said, I have always worked with our teams to segment and tier the customers. So I had a broad-based at the bottom, which was just thousands and thousands of customers, and they all received a certain set of marketing programs and plays, tactics against them. Then I had ABM Light, which were some of the target accounts that we worked with sales to say, we think these are really valuable, we want to go after these. And then there was the highly targeted, really big whales that we were going after that we knew were going to take a lot of time. Once we tiered them, we knew that, and we knew who our sphere of influence we were trying to work with, whether it was, above the line and below the line. There's all different types of personas you're going to be dealing with. We had broad-based strategies that went across all the accounts, depending on the level they were at. Then we got the higher up we went to the C level, those programs got very targeted, much more exclusive engagement type opportunities, et cetera. So it was kind of like a pyramid. We had broad, ABM Light, and then highly targeted. And we overlaid our marketing programs and plays against all of them, and some overlapped. And then as the higher you went, we had ads coming on. It is critical that whole account-based marketing, you have to tier your accounts. That strategically is so important to your overall success as to how you're going to bucketize. I used to just bucketize your accounts so you know how you're going to invest your dollars, and you can actually plan it out that way. You can say, this quarter we're going to do this for these kind of accounts and so forth. And over time, it'll make more sense to you long term when you start looking at your metrics and stuff.
Oh, Kristy, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, not all accounts are not created equal, so don't treat them as equal. You're going to be doing different things, different types of investments, and that's it. It's all tiered. Programs, accounts, everything. The approaches will be different.
I do want to double click on that just for 2 seconds, because we did have a few questions that came in on when do you know you're mature enough for one-to-one versus one-to-many. And I'm just curious if, from your perspective, that's the answer to this, is if you have a tiered approach, then you know which very exclusive accounts get a one-to-one versus the ABM Light is the one-to-many. Is that accurate?
Yes. The broader based accounts, which for me, I was in the storage industry. There was thousands of accounts that went in there. That was all one-to-many marketing. That was emails, digital marketing efforts, webinars, all those kind of things. And then the higher up we went in the accounts, and we were dealing with more C levels, that became one-to-one, very specific marketing, very personalized marketing to whether it was a chief security officer or a CIO. Yes, it's one-to-many and then one-to-one. And as your accounts, the value of them goes up, that's when you'll know what how you're determining your approach to those accounts and those people in the accounts.
Awesome. Now we're talking about aligning within marketing, but we're marketers. We interface with a lot of stakeholders, internally and externally. The largest internal stakeholder traditionally is our sales counterpart. If we're responsible for driving pipeline and revenue for sales, of course it is, right? So let's shift just a little bit. How do you recommend getting sales on board with ABM and aligned on requirements and expectations? And why don't we just stick with you, Kristy, for now?
Okay, so anyone that's worked with me and has done ABM, you'll hear me say this. ABM is a full team sport. It is a team sport. It is not an individual sport. So everyone in the sales organization has a role in making ABM successful, whether you're an inside sales rep, or you're a field account representative, or you're a regional sales leader, or you're the head of sales. So it's an all-encompassing team sport. So if you cannot get that, you're going to struggle. And the biggest challenge you're going to struggle is people are going to say, I'm not going to follow up on this because it doesn't make sense. You know, we all know the typical sales responses to marketing about stuff. So it's a full team sport, first of all. So you've got to get alignment on that. You have to really do a lot of education and socializing. Unless you're a sales leader, is pretty, hey, I've heard people are doing this, it's working. Let's talk about how we could possibly do something like this. I am seeing more and more of that now because ABM is becoming so hot now as an overall strategy. But you do have to do education and socializing. And it might not always be just with sales. To your point, you've got other key stakeholders. So content is always going to be a big part of account-based marketing. And it's the content for all different types of sphere of buyers that you're dealing with. So I always partnered along with the product marketing teams or whoever is responsible for doing content. Even if we did it externally, we would lay all that stuff out together to make sure we could actually do what we were trying to do. If not, we had to scale it back a little bit and maybe just touch on a couple of personas and then go from there. But did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I would love to double click on that a little bit with you, Jeremy, and get your take.
Yeah, so I think so. I'm a big fan of getting, so if you approach your sales team and there's some hesitancy, they say, hey, like, I'm not going to invest in this until I see some returns, which that's what salespeople do. And I think we need to empathize with salespeople. They make their living on whether or not they close business, you know, so they're going to stick with the tried and true methodologies that pay them money to feed their families. So I think we just need to like have a good understanding of like where they come from, who they are, and what makes what things are important to them. So one thing that I do like, depending upon the culture of the organization, getting the top level executives to buy in is a really great way to get sales to buy in, because sales tends to follow what CEOs, COOs, heads of business development, depending upon how the structure of the organization works, say they should focus on. The other thing that I like to do with sales leaders, and this particularly worked for me one time where I had, I'll call them a stubborn sales director, was I wrote out all of the clients that we had that I was looking to get more of. There was like 12 or so clients in the company that were just like A-level clients. I mean, like the ones that they love to work with, they made the most money on, they were just like repeat business concept. They were just great. And then I showed them a list of 100 more that fit the exact same profile. And I was like, we could get, like, if we get 10% of these, I mean, what's your life like? You know, like, and then it's like, okay, then they can start envisioning what that's like. So yeah, there was a little bit of work done up front from marketing to kind of like educate and sell. But the idea was paint a picture of what life could look like if this is successful, because you're going to need things from them. And on that note, you got to get the buy-in early in the process. They need to be part of the building of the whole program. And Kristy may, alluded to some mistake that someone else made. I made the first time I ever tried to implement ABM, I was the marketing director, and I tried to implement it, 80% of it on the marketing side. And the initial year of it running was bad because every time I asked my sales team to do something involved in touch points, they were very, very hesitant and it didn't work. So the idea is sell them on the concept up front and what life can look like in the future. Don't build anything out until you get them on board, but sell the vision. Once they're bought into the vision, then you can move forward.
I actually have a comment on something Jeremy just said that was really critical. There's something that I did that I forgot we did. So when you're implementing ABM, you don't necessarily have to do it for the entire sales organization at once. You can do pilot programs. So you can show success with a regional leader or somebody who's a little more progressive. I've always had some that are like willing to try things and get more efficient and more effective. You can do pilots in regions or with a certain set of sales or sales reps, and that regional leader, that sales leader can be your sponsor / champion. So yeah, don't think you have to do it all at once. You could maybe just start small, test it out, pilot it, show success, and then it'll be easier to socialize and gain engagement across the board with the with the sales organization.
So true. I do just want to ask Jeremy, if you're a junior, if you're like a more junior marketer that's been given the task of ABM and they're internalizing your feedback on trying to get alignment from the get-go of it being a team sport, I imagine that some of the feedback we're giving as well is that may also be managing up, where you're providing that feedback to your manager who maybe can help lead some of the conversations with sales to ensure that buy-in. So if you're not sure where to go, would that be your recommendation?
100%. Yeah. I think we may be sending it out as kind of like a giveaway or something like that. But I have a ABM campaign template that helps you sell like your account-based marketing plan internally. And part of that is just the math around it. Like, hey, like if we can reach out to this number of accounts and we can close this many and you keep your estimates extremely conservative, we can expect this type of revenue and this much cost. And therefore, but there are things that these, that every single stakeholder cares about, that the CEO cares about, the leader of sales. If you're a junior level marketing person, your head of marketing is going to care about. And the idea is that if you can build a message that's going to resonate with each one of those stakeholders, it's going to say, look, this is a worthwhile investment of our time, effort, and resources, then you're going to get that alignment, and so the idea is that there's just, like in most things, there's a few boxes you got to check, but understand that, and Kristy said this really well, you have many stakeholders and they all care about different things. You need to address each one of them, because you're asking a lot from them, and that's okay. You can ask a lot from people, but make sure you make it worth their while. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stay with you, Jeremy, just for a moment, and take it to kind of a measurement place. So we've covered a lot of ground, right? Have some potential tactics in mind to start. You've aligned with the broader plan. Now you've kind of successfully aligned with sales. You start working on some things, but if you're not sure what to expect from them, if you're not clear on the outcome that you're driving, then what does a successful ABM campaign actually look like? So how do you do that? How do you measure the success of your ABM campaigns? Maybe some example metrics would be really helpful on evaluating performance.
Absolutely. So usually when you start out, you're going to want to have, you're going to have a number. Usually it's a new client acquisition number. That's or I should say that's definitely one that you could start with. It could be revenue, all kinds of stuff, but it's marketing. Traditionally we're feeding new or additional repeat business. So let's say it's just for simplicity's sake, it's new client acquisitions. You're saying, hey, it would be awesome if we closed one new client from this account-based marketing campaign, keeping the math simple. And I would look at things like traditional win rates or close rates. So let's say you close at a traditional rate of 10%. So it's like, okay, I need one new client. I close at a rate of 10%. That means I need to reach out to at least 10 accounts, right? I need to have 10 accounts that I'm targeting in order for me to land one of them. So it's like, all right, well then how about we shouldn't do the bare minimum. How about we reach out to 30 accounts? So now, and here's what we're doing. We're building the metrics that support the overall end game goal. End game goal is one client. We know we close at about a 10% rate, so we need to reach out to 10. Let's reach out to 30 in case some of our assumptions are off. So those would be like super high level, simple metrics to start with, and that would at least focus your efforts on what, just some simple math around there. Getting into some of the tiered options. It's like, okay, if I need to reach out to 30, I need to make sure that, at least X amount of them are tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, but that's getting more into the more complex. But the idea here is then you start getting into, okay, well, how do I know if what I'm doing is successful? You want to have an understanding of timing and touch points. Those are the two things that I think are really key. So you should have an understanding of when things are going to happen, and so are you actually doing the things you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do them? And to Kristy talked about earlier, whether it's an email campaign you're running, whether it's a webinar, SMS, text message, whether it's an event that you're going to, there's all these things that you're going to say you're going to do to go after these particular accounts. So the idea is, I'm a big fan of a touch point tracking plan. Did you actually execute on the things that you need to do in order to achieve the end result, because you're not always going to be right. You're going to send an email campaign out, it's going to get no responses, you're going to be like, okay, that didn't particularly work. But you're going to go to a trade show where all of these accounts are attendees, and you're going to try and speak to 20 of the 30 of them. Did you speak to 20 of the 30 of them? And the idea is that if you are tracking your touch points, those are leading indicators towards success. So it's a really, really important thing to have timing and touch points that you are monitoring on a regular cadence. It doesn't matter if that's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, but you have to set the cadence that makes sense for you. So timing and touch points, and in general, you want to just hold yourself accountable to the things you said you were going to do in the beginning. ABM works really well for people who hold themselves accountable. It's really, really frustrating when you get a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months in, and you've missed a bunch of deadlines and things aren't going well. It's like, well, all right, all the pieces that we said we were going to do to have this result occur, we did 60% of them, and then all of a sudden, we're wondering why things didn't work out the way we want. Not every touch point is going to work the way you hope, but it's the sum of all of them that makes the big difference. So that's why I'm a big fan of tracking behaviors and touch points. They're leading indicators to the eventual success.
Yeah, I think sometimes, as I think about what you're saying, that is also related to some earlier points made about like going too big too fast and not really focusing in or piloting it with a specific sales rep or being very specific to a core set of tier 1 accounts maybe. Kristy, anything you would add?
Yeah, so like Jeremy said, first of all, I keep it really simple. So when I've implemented ABM programs in the past, your metrics should be so simple up front that you cannot fail. I'll be really blunt about it. So marketing can get some good wins. Your metrics will get more complicated over time. They can get more sophisticated. So I actually put things in a phased approach. In phase 1, which is the first 2 quarters of the program, we're going to be looking for this. So I'll give you an example. So because we're doing account-based marketing, and there's so many buyers that, or so many personas now inside of accounts that are influencing, recommending, decision makers, you're marketing to a different sphere of groups of people. So I measured target coverage, meaning, do we have net new contacts? How many of those contacts are engaged? What's the growth of the number? What's the percentage growth of contacts in an account? How many are net new engaging with content? How many are repeat engaging with content? I kept it super, super simple, just to show that we were building out what we needed to do to actually surround account and really start account-based marketing towards all those different personas. The other thing, and I think Jeremy was sort of saying this, influencing pipeline should always be a metric. Sales will always say, well, you didn't have anything to do with that deal. Well, that's not how it works. There's attribution metrics that are going on. It takes, I think, the last time I looked at data, it's like anywhere from 10 plus touches now to get somebody to engage with you. There's just so much coming at people. It will take a long time, and it will be different things that they engage with. So always count your touch points, have your attribution is set up, but always count influenced pipeline, because that touch, you're going to have to assume it made a difference in the overall progress of that deal. That's just the way it is. That's a metric that will matter if you're influencing pipeline, because at the end of the day, it's going to be about revenue. So I kept it that simple up front, and then you can get way more sophisticated over time. But if you're initially starting, keep it simple so you have some good wins. You're going to learn, don't overcomplicate it, don't overpromise, just keep it simple. And then phase it out, and then add things as you learn more. You can add more metrics, and you'll start to see trends, and you can say, let's track this now, because this seems to be maybe something that we weren't really paying attention to. But if you're really starting it out, this is where it gets hard. You're going to have to benchmark. So start your data. You're not going to have much data to work with, but benchmark and track so you can show progress over time. Like I said earlier, this is not a short-term strategy. This is a long-term strategy. Very few times do you have instant gratification. It's going to take time. These are usually large accounts. Deal cycles can be more complex, and they tend to be much longer. The more expensive deals you're selling, the longer this process takes. So that's my advice.
Yeah. So with that, just trying to thank you all again for attending today. We hope you enjoyed as much as we did. Thank you again, and have a great day.